In this presentation we're going to go through some of the GDA tools and show how they can be used by federations and by judges to monitor judge performance and address education issues. A quick review of the GDA services. We have rider services where we do detailed tracking of horse-by-horse figure performances, where we identify strengths, weaknesses, variability, how well a figure is mastered. We have trainer, chef-to-keeper services where we follow and compare progress of a large number of riders, and we give access to a detailed evaluations and simulations rider by rider, horse by horse. And then what we're going to talk about today is federation services, judge education and promotion, comparative statistics for a core of judges, and then judge services, allowing them to compare within a peer group without breaching confidentiality, and to drill down into individual events and obtain the feedback themselves. So, in collaboration with the FEI Judge Supervisors Panel, GDA has developed tools to oversee a large judging core. Its possibility to track basic consistency parameters, but also detailed figure-by-figure consistency. It gives the possibility for Judge Supervisor Panel to explore the full details of the data, to nominate reference judges against whom other judges are measured, for example. It allows to identify figure types that may benefit from more judge training, and of course identify which judges should best follow that training. It allows to identify the judges best suited for promotion and, for example, for training of other judges. So here's the judge overview that somebody logged in as the judge supervisor would get. They can see a list of all of the judges that they supervise. They can select on, for example, to select those who are above a certain grade, or those who have judged a certain number of competitions, etc. And we currently have three judging measurement parameters: score consistency, rank consistency, and the fraction of the time the judge differs by more than 5%. Score consistency means is typically, as you see, the top judge here on this list has a score consistency factor of 1.41. This is the standard deviation of his scoring compared to that of his colleagues. There's rank consistency factor, which is a more detailed definition we won't go into here, but it shows how often does he change the rank of, for example, in the top 5 ranked riders in a competition. And there's the large deviation factor. How often is his judgment, for example, 4 or 5% or more away from other judges in the test. One can drill down from this and look, for example, at a graphical representation of some of those things I've just looked at. So you could select a particular judge who has, for example, a score consistency factor with the red line of 1.34, and you can compare him with the distribution of score consistency factors of all your judges. You see that he's actually one of your better judges. Or, for example, the rank consistency factor again. You can also see those judges out on the tails of the distribution, which perhaps should be studied in more detail. All the judges in the Federation's program have access to their personal judging history. They can do statistical comparison with their unnamed peers. They don't have access to the details of any other judges' analysis results. They have event-by-event details. As soon as the data is uploaded, they can look at the details of the events that they have judged. They can use graphical tools to identify potential problems. They can use a number of tools which I'll show you in the next pages. Without some sort of feedback like this, it's hard to imagine how judges can be expected to improve their performance. So here's a judge's view of his own judging record. I have a set of competitions that they've judged at. In this case, we only have the final scores for these ones. Some competitions, it's beneficial when the full figure scores are available. A much more detailed analysis can be performed. Here you see it's possible to look at the history. You can reorder this table in many different ways just by clicking on the tops of the columns. You can look at it in different ways. You can look at things like I mentioned, the difference, the spread, the rank changes in the top 5, and you may then want to select one of these competitions as one to go into to study in more detail. You can drill down into an event. So this is a event that you have judged at, and so you have access to the full score details. In this particular view, it looks rather like the standard score sheet, but instead of showing the scores over on the right hand side, what we've done is show the final score difference between each judge and the average of the other judges. So for example, we see that in the top line with Don Aurelio with a score of 73.2, the judge at C gave exactly that score, 73.2. Judge at E was 1.2% up. The judge at B was 0.4% below. And we can select, for example, color keys, so that when this difference is bigger than a certain value, we can change the color of the text, and so it highlights it and draws your attention to where potential problems may exist. This view, final score difference, is only one of many views that you can get of the table to help you. For example, either as a federation, as the judge supervisor, or as an individual judge, you may consider it advantageous to understand this table by selecting one of the judges and calling them the reference judge. In this case, we've chosen the reference judge as C, and now we see the difference of each of the other judges with respect to that judge. This might be particularly powerful, for example, when you have a more experienced or senior judge judging with more junior judges. Numbers have all the details, but they can be sometimes very hard to actually spot where differences have occurred. We like to use things like color charts. This is just one example of a number of different color charts we have. This one shows an entire event. We see the scores for each judge on a scale from red to green. There's nothing particularly anomalous about this event. But for example, if we spot green boxes low down in the table or red boxes high up in the table, that would immediately draw our attention to a score, to a judgment that perhaps needs to be looked at, and we may learn something about the event and the judging by drilling down into it in more detail. When we have all the figure scores available, one can do actually a very sophisticated analysis. In this analysis, we've done what we call a timeline of the event, and so along the horizontal axis is the test going from the entrance and halt into the collected marks at the end, collective marks at the end. What's plotted is for a particular judge, in this case Judge H, the difference between the score that they gave for this figure and the score that the average of the other judges gave for this figure. So when it's above the line, this judge scored higher than the average of the other judges, and when it's below the line, the judge scored lower than the average of the other judges. As we add up, go from the beginning of the test to the end of the test, the green line follows the sum, adding the plus and negative numbers, of the difference between this judge and the other judges. You see that it has actually ended up over on the right hand side very close to 0, about 1.5 points below their colleagues. The blue line follows the absolute difference, and so we see that it had arrived at a number above 20. What this means is, for example, that if you were 1 point high in the first figure, 1 point low in the second, 1 point high in the third, 1 point low in the fourth, at the end of the test you would end up with exactly the same final score. All the plus ones and minus ones would cancel out, and that would be the green line. However, you would also end up 30 points away, because all of the plus ones and minus ones in absolute would add up to be a big number, and that would indicate inconsistent judging. It's judging where figure by figure you have not agreed with the other judges, but at the end of the day your final score is the same. So what can GDA do specifically for National Federation? We can incorporate all of the relevant research tests. We can render the site in your language. We can create login accounts for supervisors. We can create login accounts for all of the judges concerned. We can work with the Federation to develop the most relevant analytics for your requirements. where we can have direct input from an event scoring service, we can build an immediate event analysis for the on-site jury discussions. And as a spin-off of that, the National Federation automatically gets access to monitor their top riders as well. So, for example, if we're tracking the top judges, then by definition, top riders are also having their information recorded, which allows the Federation to gain oversight of the performance of every actual or potential top sport candidate, rider and horse, and for example, to use that in its selection and detection process. Summary. So, by giving judges the possibility to explore the details of their judged events, they get vital feedback on their judging. And by giving supervisors statistical classifications of their judge core performance, with the possibility to understand why differences may have arisen, so not just the numbers, but also the reasons behind, they can get better understanding, they can identify the stronger and weaker judges, and they can then direct training and promotion appropriately. We'll be delighted to develop a program with your federation. Please feel free to contact us.